Changdeokgung also known as Changdeokgung Palace or Changdeok Palace is set within a large park in Jongno-gu, Seoul, South Korea. It is one of the 5 grand palaces built by the kings of the Joseon Dynasty. As it is located east of Gyeongbok Palace, Changdeokgung along with Changgyeonggung is also referred to as the East Palace. Changdeokgung was the most favored palace of many Joseon princes and retained many elements dating from the 3 kingdoms of Korea period that were not incorporated in the more contemporary Gyeongbokgung. One such element is the fact that the buildings of Changdeokgung blend with the natural topography of the site instead of imposing themselves upon it. It, like the other 5 grand palaces in Seoul, was heavily damaged during the Japanese occupation of Korea. Currently, only about 30% of the pre-Japanese structures survive. History. Changdeokgung was the second palace after Gyeongbokgung, which had been established in 1395 as a primary palace. In the midst of strife for the throne between princes and vassals, authority of Gyeongbokgung was deteriorated. King Jongno-gu enthroned by Prince Jeong moved the capital to Gyeongbokgung, the one of Goryeo Dynasty, again in 1400 on the pretext of superior geographical features of it, in fact, in order to avert the power struggle. King Taejong soon taking over the throne returned to Hanseong, present-day Seoul, had a new palace named Changdeokgung instead of Gyeongbokgung because he had killed his half-brothers in Gyeongbokgung whose construction was led by Jeong-du, the king's rival before. Construction of Changdeok Palace began in 1405, and was completed in 1412. King Seonjo expanded the palace grounds by about 500,000 square meters, including Hyun. The palace was burned to the ground during the Japanese invasion in 1592 and reconstructed in 1609 by King Seonjo and King Gyeongnagun. The palace burned back down in 1623 because of King Injo's political revolt against Gyeongnagun. The palace was also attacked by the Manchu Qing, but throughout its history of reconstruction and repair has remained faithful to its original design. Changdeokgung was the site of the royal court and the seat of government until 1868, when the neighboring Gyeongbokgung was rebuilt. Korea's last emperor, Seonjong, lived here until his death in 1926. Other members of the former royal family were permitted to live in parts of the palace, such as former Crown Prince Yoo Union, who lived in the Naksonje buildings with his wife Princess Bangja and sister Princess Deokha until their respective deaths. This arrangement was periodically interrupted by differing presidential orders supporting and objecting to their use of the historic facilities. The son of Yeon, Yi-gai also lived in the palace for variant intervals prior to moving to semi-permanent residence in Tokyo due to mental health issues, having been unable to fully adapt to the new career. Today there are 13 buildings remaining on the palace grounds and 28 pavilions in the gardens, occupying 110 acres in all, and the area is designated as Historical Site No. 122. Buildings of note include Donwerman, Injeongjeon, Songjongjeon, Hujongdang, Daejeon, and Naksonje. The palace chosen to worldwide travel expert evaluation and reader preferences is registered the world's 500 attractions in research. Structures. The palace was built between Peak Maebong of Mount Bugaksan in the back and Revolt Gumcheon having flowing in the front, influenced by the principal Besamimsu in Feng Shui theory. Contrary to Gyeongbokgung, whose main buildings are arranged in accurate architectural principle, however, buildings in Changdeokgung are disposed more freely without a regular system. Though its structure seems chaotic at a glance, all buildings are in harmony with the environment surrounding them. Changdeokgung consists of governmental areas centering on Injeongjeon and Seonjeongjeon, Royal Private Area, Naksonje area in the east, and Hyun beyond the North Hills. Most of major official buildings such as Injeongjeon, Main Hall of Changdeokgung, Seonjeongjeon, King's Office, and many of government offices are placed in the front parts of the palace, beyond which there are royal private court for king and queen. King's houses like Seonjeongjeon, Hujongdang, and Naksonje are surrounded in many folds of buildings and courts in case any outsider break through. The architectural style of Changdeokgung overall features simplicity and frugality because of Confucian ideology. Structures of particular interest include Donwerman Gate, the main palace gate. Built in 1412, Dongwon has a two-story pavilion-type wooden structure, and is the largest of all palace gates. Dongwon was burned down during the Japanese invasion of 1592 and was restored in 1608. Gyeongbokgung Bridge, oldest bridge still extant in Seoul. Built 1411. In Gyeongbokgung Hall, the throne hall of Changdeokgung, it was used for major state affairs including the coronation of a new king and receiving foreign envoys. Originally built in 1405, it was rebuilt in 1610 after being burned down during the 1592 Japanese invasion, and a third time in 1804 after being destroyed by a fire. Seongjongjeon Hall, an office for ruling officials, the king held daily meetings with ministers, reported on state affairs and seminars here. Gyeongbokgung Hall, originally the king's bedchamber, it became his workplace after Seongjongjeon was deemed too small for conducting routine state affairs. The original Gyeongbokgung was destroyed by a fire in 1917. The reconstructed structure is completely different from the original due to recent Western influences. Wooden floorboards and carpets, glass windows, and chandeliers can be seen inside the building. Daejeon Hall, official residence of the Queen. Destroyed by fire in 1917, it was rebuilt with materials taken from Gyeongbokgung. Daejeon was used as a residence for the last empress of Joseon, allowing us a glimpse into the final years of the royal household of the Joseon Dynasty. Juhannu Pavilion, royal libraries stood in this area. State exams were conducted in front of the pavilion on special occasions in presence of the king. Yeonggyeongdang Residence, built in 1827, it was an audience hall modeled after a typical literati house. Huan. Behind the palace lies the 78-acre Huan which was originally constructed for the use of the royal family and palace women. The garden incorporates a lotus pond, pavilions, and landscaped lawns, trees, and flowers. There are over 26,000 specimens of 100 different species of trees in the garden and some of the trees behind the palace are over 300 years old. The garden for the private use of the king had been called Gyeongbokgung because even high officials were not allowed to enter without the king's permission. It had also been called Naewon. Today Koreans often call it Baewon which derived from the office of same name in the late 19th century. Though the garden had many other names, the one most frequently used through Joseon Dynasty period was Huan. In September 2012, the Gyeongbokgung Pavilion in the garden was reopened after a year-long restoration project. The pavilion was restored based on the Dongwon-do from 1820, National Treasures of South Korea No. 249. A variety of ceremonies hosted by the king were held in Huan. In early period of Joseon Dynasty, military inspections participated with king himself had been practiced many times. King Sejong had troops parade and array before him or commanded them by himself in the garden. In addition, giving feasts, playing archery games, or enjoy fireworks in Huan. The Onyuchan area is of particular interest. It contains a U-shaped water channel carved in 1636 for floating wine cups, with a small waterfall and an inscribed poem on the boulder above it. The area also contains 5 small pavilions. World Heritage, Changdeokgung was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1997. The UNESCO committee inscribing the site stated the place was an outstanding example of Far Eastern palace architecture and garden design being exceptional because the buildings are integrated into and harmonized with a natural setting, and adapted to the topography and retaining indigenous tree cover. Portions of the palace were used to film the hugely popular Korean drama Jongno-gu in the first decade of the 21st century. Gallery. References. Bibliography, Choi, Jongdeok, Changdeokgung, The True Palace of Joseon, Seoul, Munhwa. Hoon, Shin Young-hoon. The Royal Palaces of Korea, 6 Centuries of Dynastic Grandeur. Singapore, Stallion Press. ISBN 978-981-08-0806-8. Yoon, Jong-soon, Beautiful Seoul, Seoul, Sungmin Publishing House. Pages for €51 are particularly relevant. Each building has a picture and a historical description. Changdeokgung Palace, undated pamphlet available at the palace. External links: UNESCO, Changdeokgung Palace Complex, Changdeokgung, Official Guide from Cultural Heritage Administration, Changdeokgung, Official Seoul City Tourism, Life in Korea, Changdeok Palace/Baiwon Garden, Photo Gallery, The Seoul Guide, Changdeokgung Palace.